We are welcoming Dr. Zhao Hai. I don't know if I pronounce your name well because Chinese names are difficult in the pronunciation. Senior Fellow of the Institute of World Economy and Politics of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences and Director of International Political Studies at the National Institute of Global Strategy. It is an honor to have you here because we are very interested about the geopolitical new balances after the rise, the escalation of the American-Chinese tensions and competitions. So yesterday, or a few days ago, the ambassador in Greece had a very interesting forum about COSCO, about many enterprises from China. And I wanted to ask you very frankly, and I want to begin the interview with this question. Does China has a fear that under the pressure of USA, the Greek government will change the state of the Piraeus harbor and break all the commitments with the Chinese part? Because we just saw it, we watched it in Panama. The High Court of Panama just broke all, the commitments, the contracts, annulled the contracts with Hong Kong Hutchison firm amid the American pressure. And now we don't know what will happen with the two ports at the Panama Canal. So, first of all, is there a fear in Beijing about the COSCO and under the pressure of USA, new escalation, and changes in Piraeus?
Well, there's concern in Beijing, absolutely. But let me say this first. This is a long-term U.S. strategy. It's not just the Trump administration. Even before that, when the U.S. entered into so-called strategic competition with China, they've been very worried about China's port projects throughout the Belt and Road Initiative and also all the way extended to Americas. So they try to push out China's management of ports, and they always sort of say that China's project is ultimately related to security, to China's military expansion, and using that excuse, trying to disrupt normal business cooperations. And then after the second Trump administration, you can see that they're accelerating this process by pressuring governments around the world that have ports cooperating with Chinese companies to basically violate their own law and also, violating all the contractual laws and also violating international norms to try to disrupt China's operations. So yes, to clearly answer your question, there is a concern from the Chinese side.
So there is then a fear that maybe something will change in Piraeus.
Well, it's not about fear because this is ultimately up to the Greek government, and they're weighing their interests, the pros and cons of maintaining a relationship with China or bent over to the U.S. pressure. That's ultimately hurting Greek interest, not just about China's interest. So it's really up to them.
Yes, but what if then the Greek government annuls amid the American pressure the contract with COSCO? Then which will be the door of China to Europe? Because we see a revival of the European-Chinese relationships the last period. So which can be then the alternative? And of course, will there be a reaction for Panama? Because it's very serious, the developments with the annulation of the contract there with Hutchison Hong Kong firm.
Yeah. Well, once again, China's entrance into Europe has multiple points. Greek is just one point that we prefer because there's a very good cooperation between the two sides. If Greek decided to turn their back on Chinese companies and try to disrupt this relationship, then there are other options, I think, for China to access Europe. As you know, that China now is developing northern line through the Arctic to try to, and that line is actually cutting the entire trip by 1/3. And also, other than Greek, there are other ports in the Mediterranean that the Chinese ships can access. So overall, again, this is a very preferential, a very good deal for the Greek nation and its port workers working there. It's not just benefiting China; it's mutually beneficial.
So the ports in the Mediterranean that could be the alternative are which?
Well, I think there are other options along the, particularly with ships towards, for instance, Italy before, and also there are ports in Spain.
So
on the other side,
has the government of China talked with the government of Meloni and of Sanchez yet for that issue?
that I don't have that information. But again, port access was never a problem. Port management was the problem. So even if, for instance, there's problem of port management or ownership of the operation, China can still transport its goods through ports and also on land through rail. So it's not about the flow of goods. It's about who's managing the port more efficiently and in what way.
So the Greenland episode derives from the alternative of China to bring its trade through the Arctic. Do you think that this is one of the reasons that USA caused the episode?
Yeah. Well, if we think President Trump is very rational and he's thinking this from a strategic perspective, and of course he can claim that he wants to control the northern routes and also in particular the critical minerals on Greenland. But however, I think ultimately that's what his ego is at play. He wants to just claim the sovereign, the ownership of Greenland in violation of international law. That's another issue. But overall, I think again, I think there are multiple ways for China to access European market to get the shipping lane continue to open. That's in the interest of European countries. But the problem is that, of course, the U.S. is saying that because Chinese is managing the port, and therefore that's posing a security threat. I think that's a lie. That's completely wrong.
So tell me, because we see that China wants to project power, but yet it seeks to avoid conflicts. So which would be the reaction for Panama? And of course, because, for example, we didn't see any reaction for Venezuela, despite we know that the part of the energy that China needs derives from Venezuela. And the next question will be, what will be then the reaction if USA attacks to Iran in an escalation that it is expected to happen?
Well, there are a number of questions here. First of all, I think the Venezuela issue is the U.S. is clearly violating international law and even violating President Maduro's personal civil rights, human rights. I mean, just a few hours before, President Xi called President Trump, and they're in conversation on a number of issues, I believe, including the situation in Venezuela. In terms of Panama, the Hutchinson Company already sued the Panama side and demanding for compensation and also questioning the legality of that ruling. Same thing, if something happened with Chinese other contracts that's been signed years ago, and if they ultimately turn that around and using some excuses to disrupt the contract, then China will try to use international arbitration and also commercial courts to settle the difference. I don't think China is totally fundamentally different from the United States. We don't use military means to solve differences.
So there is a problem with your voice, the microphone. It's making a voice that it's not so clear, that it's make an echo. Can you please fix it?
Let me.
Yes, this is a problem. And I just speak to hear you. Come on.
Is this better?
Much, much better. Thank you so much. So what if finally Donald Trump decides to attack to Iran? Will China then also be silent?
Well, China was never silent. At the United Nations Security Council, we always oppose any violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of other countries, and strongly oppose if the United States taken this military action against Iran, then that is absolutely illegal on international law, on the terms of international law. So yes, I think China will oppose any use of military means against the Iranian people.
So tell me something. Chinese, Russian, and Iranian warships arrived for drill in South Africa. Naval exercises come as tensions. This is happening because is seeking for an alternative for the energy issue and can really fulfill the gap if Iran also will be lost. The oils of Iran will be lost for China?
Well, first of all, Iranian oil over the years, and also including the Venezuela oil, is not a very important source of China's oil and gas and energy source because of U.S. sanctions over the past decade. The oil supply of both Venezuela and Iran is in severe decline. So, I mean, it's very hard to get access to Venezuela and Iranian oil. A lot of the operations is, as you know, under the radar. So there's no, I think, major loss in terms of supply side for the overall Chinese energy. But if there's disruption of Iranian oil, you can imagine that the global oil price will go up, and that will, cause international, including European consumption of energy price go up as well.
So tell me something. U.S. and China are truly disengaging in all sectors, or only selectively to specific key sectors? And which are those?
You mean the competition?
No, I mean till now they had some collaboration, sectors of collaboration. So are they disengaging from all of these sectors, or they keep some key sectors and they still continue to collaborate?
Well, at the present stage, I think there's a very limited area in which the US is really cooperating with China because of the mistrust or distrust issue between the two sides. However, on a limited number of major issues, for instance, particularly the issues that the United States very much focused on, like fentanyl, like the control of drugs, and also illegal immigrations. It's mostly about their domestic issues that they wanted to cooperate with China. But China wanted to cooperate with the United States on a much wider issues, including the stability of international order, international system. And on that front, I think Trump administration has a totally different idea. They wanted to completely change the international setting. And that's where China cannot agree with the United States to use unilateral, foreign policy against other countries.
So, what economic leverage does China still hold over the U.S. and vice versa, and mainly through which sectors?
Well, it's hard to name one or two sectors. So far, what the world is seeing is that China has dominance in rare earth. The critical minerals supply. However, China is a major industrial power. We're pretty much the world #1 manufacturing country. So I think in many areas, the United States and China are mutually dependent. So it's very hard for the US, as you can see over the years, try to cut off China or decouple with China. The same thing applies to Europe. We're in a globalized era, and the global supply is intertwined. It's hard to cut off. But then, on the other hand, I think you can see that in the last couple of days, the United States is organizing 50+ countries into something called Critical Minerals Ministerial. And also, they're organizing something called Pax Silica, trying to build an independent supply chain on on the chip making, which is exclusive. I mean, keeping China out. I think that is their effort, but I don't think that will succeed.
Faced with Trump's tariffs and threats, BRICS countries are trying to reduce dollar use in trading with each other. So can that have an effect on the US economy? No.
Well, you just mentioned there's a naval exercise cooperation between Russia, China, and South Africa. Initially, also include India, Iran. I think there are many other cooperations among BRICS countries, and moving forward, there will be intensified or upgraded cooperation among major developing countries. That is a trend that the United States cannot disrupt because that's the internal need of the developing countries of the global South to work with each other on trade, on technology, on many issues related to global governance. I think that should be welcomed, not opposed by the United States.
China sold $688 billion in US debt. What can affect that in the global economical system and mainly in the US economy?
No, I think that has little impact on US economy because now the major buyers of US bond is US domestic sources, their own banks, private institutions, central bank, and other allies of the United States try to increase their purchase. But for China and for many other countries, US debt is no longer safe because it was a safe asset. It was trusted by the world. But with the current fiscal policy of the United States, and also with the current trend, I mean, continued trajectory of the Trump administration's domestic and foreign policy, there's a lot of danger in the U.S. monetary policy and its fiscal policy. Therefore, its bond markets will experience more fluctuation. And China is seeking for more safer asset, also diversifying its financial holdings. So I think it's reasonable for China to lower its exposure to U.S. debt market.
So the competition between Europe and USA and the tension lately, do you think can be an advantage for China? Lately, we saw that a lot of bilateral exchanges between European leaders with President Xi, especially the big, surprise was Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of UK. What do you expect from his visit? Is it a part of something bigger? What is really happening between the UK and China relationships right now?
I think UK is not a single case. After Davos, we see the rising of the so-called Carney doctrine. And I think many Western countries are awakening to what is the nature of Trumpism. And they know that in order to find a stronger and more solid footing, and also in order to continue to support the current multilateral international system, they need China. They need to work with China, cooperate with China, and they share many sort of common political and economic interests with China. So this is a natural move for many of the European leaders, global leaders, including UK, to reset their relationship with China and to see this world clearly and the intentions of the Trump administration against Europe more clearly. And that's what's, I think, motivating them to continue to come to China.
So we saw also the visit of President Macron to China lately. We saw the Canadian Prime Minister's visit, the visit of from Latin America. Remind me from which country was the exchanges? The leader of one of the Latin America countries, anyway. So, do you think that China pitches itself as a reliable partner, as Trump alienates to the U.S. Traditional allies?
Yeah, we want to present ourselves as a stable partner, as a partner that abides by the rule of law, the US used to call, say something like rules-based international order. But I think now people realize that the rules are not for the US. The US thinking that they're beyond rules. But China is, President Xi has said that many times, that if we say something, we will do something. When our words and actions are together. And I think for the countries you mentioned, it's a process of a normalization of their trade relations with China. For instance, in Canada, they imposed 100% automobile EV tariff on China. That is absolutely no foundation to do that. And I think the Canadian Prime Minister realized that, and he comes to China and just corrected that mistake. Same thing for UK and for Macron, and later probably for Germany. I think they also try to normalize economic relationship with China. It's not necessarily benefiting or like you said, because of the US, there's some opportunity for China to take advantage. Is that other countries needs to normalize and continue to do business with China, just like China continue to do normal business and maintain normal business relationship with Russia. I think in many ways, this world need stability, and China is the source of stability right now.
So there are also restrictions on advanced chips, showing that China's technological rise is also something that annoys Donald Trump. So tell me something. Has also technology in general, AI, etc., telecoms, become a central battleground between the two countries, US and China?
I think one of the reasons is that because the US economy is seeking a way out. After 2008, the US economy is struggling. And all of a sudden, the artificial intelligence seems to be the way out to solve their debt problem, to continue to pull their economy to grow. So that's why in that area of competition, they wanted to win. They wanted to continue to dominate AI area. And China is catching up fairly quickly in terms of chip making, in terms of AI algorithm, and in terms of AI applications. So that makes the United States very worried, and their capital market is dependent on keeping the distance from other countries, including China, including Europe and other countries. So that's why I think US wanted to have imposed export controls and trying to pointing sanctions certain Chinese companies to try to delay their progress. And call it a strategic competition and securitizing many of the issues, normal market competition and technological competition. We always oppose that, but I think the United States has their own problems, domestic problems to solve before they can see this relationship in a different lens.
So can you say that China can quietly win also at the AI race?
Well, it's not about win or lose, as the world clearly see that China is taking a different path. So we're not competing in the same course. We're competing on a different chessboard. I believe in our chessboard, Chinese companies will win in terms of the real application of AI in daily lives, in the manufacturing world, and also many of the services that provide, and also in particular, China's algorithm is open source. That is particularly beneficial to small and medium companies that wanted to use AI but don't have a lot of capital. But the US temporarily, I think for now, is leading in AGI because they're very powerful. They use all the world's most powerful chips and building the biggest data centers, trying to utilize their monopoly on data. So I think, yeah, we're competing on different tracks.
So what kind of global power does China aspire to be? Because we're talking that it has the ambition to become a global power that plays a key role. So a reformer of the current international order or a creator of a new one?
So far, I think China's official position is that we wanted to keep the current international system, however, improve upon it. So China wanted to be a power, but a power among other powers. China does not to seek sort of hegemony or dominance in the world. We welcome other developing countries, other developed world countries, all play their role so that we will have a collective and effective government, global governance around the world. People, abide by rules and don't return the world back to the jungle rule, the might is right, the winner takes all sort of society, which is cruel, and it's a regression. It's not a progress. I think China wanted to see the world that is inclusive and then sustainable. And right now we're on a very unsustainable course.
So China, you're telling me that is not seeking for global leadership, but selective influence in key strategic areas. Which can you say are these strategic areas?
Well, first of all, China is already playing a leadership role in the UN Security Council. We're among five permanent members, and we continue to play a leadership role in the areas that we could. For instance, in recent years in climate change, and also in peace building. So China is growing. So when we accumulate enough strength, enough capabilities, of course, we will be more and more taking more responsibility. But that responsibility and rights must be balanced. And other countries, same thing. If you have the power, if you have new ideas, then you can play a leading role in certain areas.
Yes, you're talking about UN, but Donald Trump wants to replace it with his Board of Peace. And we see that globally it is being undermined. Everybody underestimates UN and the role of UN the last years. So which is your opinion about the Board of Peace of Donald Trump? And of course, I wanted to ask you, because everybody's talking about the Epstein files, have you found any connections with Chinese factors, Chinese politicians, etc., in the Epstein files, and how will the government react?
Well, first about Epstein files, there's rarely any trace of Chinese people in that files. I haven't go through all the 3 million pages or those emails yet, but you can see that particular Epstein case,
which means that you will go and search to the 3 million. You said yet.
Yeah, because there are people already setting up certain tools. Actually, you can go through Epstein's emails using very easy search tools to go through.
Yes. So,
but what I wanted to emphasize is this: you can see through the Epstein files a very small circle of American and European sort of global elites that have specific background. There are Anglo-Saxon. There are sometimes, with Jewish background, and there are like white people with money and power colluding and trying to control the world and divide their trophy. It's really a small club.
So there are not any Chinese factors inside the Epstein files yet? You haven't found?
I mean, so far you don't see Chinese factor. You don't see like either. I mean, all the global South, Latin America, Southeast Asia, South Asia, Africa. There's no involvement. All those people are coming from rich country, rich family, billionaires, and you can see this is a wedding between power and wealth in the West. So I think this has. Absolutely nothing to do with China.
So let's return to the Board of Peace. We see that Donald Trump has the ambition to reshape all the balances, the world balances we knew till now. He also wants to replace UN. Will he manage to replace UN? Will he manage to implement his agenda against the other countries finally?
No, he's not going to succeed. I was present when the Board of Peace was established, and he invited like 20 countries to sign the initial agreement. And none of the other major United Nations powers was present, and nobody is supporting his Board of Peace. And to remind you, the Board of Peace is actually born out of United Nations resolution, a particular resolution asking for a board to manage the post-war Gaza situation. And now President Trump wants to take over and sort of impose his personal will and to establish some kind of international organization to replace the UN, which will never succeed. And I think he has, what, 3 years left in his current position as the United States president. I think after that, nobody is going to really trying to curve favors from him anymore, and nobody is going to support that board of peace anymore. It's going to be forgotten in a couple of years and thrown into the dust of history.
So do you think that the Epstein files can harm him and he can lose his presidential, position? And what could that mean for politics, international politics?
Well, I think it's already did, because Trump from the very beginning claimed that he has no relationship, and then later on he said he cut off relationship with Epstein. But it's proven from those files that he has very close relationship with him. But of course, all of this is legally irrelevant and politically relevant. And now the MAGA camp is internally divided because of these Epstein files, and the Epstein event is not over yet. It's still continue to grow. So by midterm, I think the Epstein files will have a major impact on how, particularly on the conservative side, people thinking about their own leadership and in particular Trump himself.
So he
But
will.
overall, I think the world, I mean, this is just 1 year after the Trump's second term. We've already feel like this already like 3 or 4 years into his administration. There is a fatigue of him trying to pick out a fight almost every single day. I think 2 or 3 years from now, people in the United States and in the world will demand change. They will no longer be okay with such a political leadership dominating the United States and making the world a very unsafe, unpredictable place.
But will the Republicans still be in power? And if J.D. Vance remains in power, then the politics will remain the same, in fact.
Well, things move so fast, we don't know what will happen in 3 years. I mean, right now they're talking about J.D. Vance as his successor, but I think there are other competitors in his party. And also, I've seen many strong Democratic candidates in the country. So I think the game is on, and we don't know the result. That is the beauty, I think, of American democracy. You can guess, but you would never know the result.
So after the invasion, the U.S. invasion in Venezuela and the kidnap of President Maduro, international analysts were saying that now is very high the risk of military conflict over Taiwan. So how serious is it really at this point?
They're incomparable. They're completely different scenarios. First of all, the U.S. is violating international law left and right. Even before they arrest kidnapped President Maduro,
Yes.
they're raiding ships on the high sea in the international waters, killing people without any legal or evidence that proven that those are criminals, without the court, without any.
Sorry, even if they are criminals, they don't have the right to execute
to
them.
kill them, yeah. Execute
Yes.
them, exactly. They need to go through proper legal channels to make them accountable. So ultimately, I think the case in Venezuela is the breakdown of international law, the breakdown of international rules, and the loss of American respect in the world, and loss of morality of the United States. And for the case of Taiwan, again, Taiwan is part of China. It's an internal matter. And the question now is that there's a group of people who wanted to separate Taiwan out of China. And I think President Xi is trying very hard to keep the peace across the Taiwan Strait. And also on that issue, calling on the United States to curb the forces on the island, not to challenge and not to provoke and potentially lead to direct military conflict between China and the United States.
So let's talk for the domestic politics in China. So how is the growth going? We read that the growth was 5% in 2025, among weakest expansions in decades. So what does it reflect? And what are you expecting for 2026?
Well, first of all, there are two layers. On the global level, we can see in many countries now we have a K-shaped economy, meaning that there are very hot new leading sectors that are growing very fast, like AI-related industries and also robotics, new medicine, new energy sources production, and in China, EV production. So there are many emerging industries that are very profitable and growing in a higher rate. However, there's also many industries are falling behind, having losing money or having a lower profit rate, cutting employment. In China, in particular, the real estate is still weak, and the local government is still in debt, having
So the
limited
construction problem has not been solved. The construction
has not
problem.
been fundamentally solved. So the banks are still vulnerable to a certain extent, and also the local government has limited ability to continue to support the economy. So now the central government, of course, is pushing for more consumption and issuing more special debt to support and swap the local debt so that the local government can continue to function. So overall, I think China's economy is still growing at a reasonable rate, as you said, 5%. However, you will see very different, from different part of China, different region and different industries, the performance will be having huge gaps, some very good, some very bad. So I think that's where the central government comes in, trying to coordinate and make sure that the economy grow as a whole. But I think some of the issues takes time to resolve, and particularly the slump of real estate that's compounded with the slowing of the population growth is also a factor that is weighing on the Chinese economy right now.
It is also a matter that is domestic, but it was highlighted by the Western medias. China has purged its highest ranked military general. And why?
I don't know. Well, the official statement, we all see official statement is corruption. I think those high-level military officials are really even after the 20th Party Congress, there's a very severe punishment for corruption. But I think still over the years there is certain people who are focused on perhaps their own personal wealth instead of national interest, and that reflects how President Xi thinks about corruption and how he would react against any potential any act of corruption. There's no tolerance, zero tolerance. No matter how high the official is, even a vice chairman of the CMC will be prosecuted if he violates and if he become a corrupt official.
So in a few days, it is the new year of China, and it is the year of horse. So I don't know if it has a specific symbolism. Does it have the horse?
Well, the horse is always a good symbol because in Chinese idiom, there's a lot of good phrase about horse. So the horse runs fast and also meaning that the horse will accelerate your career and will make your career more successful and also will bring you like better career position, more wealth. In any case, I think all the zodiac animals are good, but horse in particular, I think, are loved by people.
So which are the three main expectations of China, of Beijing for the new year, and which are the three biggest threats that faces?
Wow, that's a difficult question. I think in the new year, Chinese people always wanted to, when they wish for a new year, they always wish for a good year of harvest. So that means people will continue to get richer, have more wealth, and also they wish their family to be healthy. Meaning we have better social security, better healthcare security. The families are all fine, very happy. And third one, of course, is that we wish the world peace. Other than ourselves, we wanted to have our neighbors to be peaceful, the world to be peaceful, and people don't, get killed in Gaza or Ukraine or other part of the world. So I think that's the wish, because in Chinese there's a very key concept called 太平 or 平安. 平 means balanced, balanced among all the players. And an means security, means safety. So I think that's what China wishes for. But the threat, of course, as you pointed out, is that there are people who are really dissatisfied with the consequences of globalization, with the consequences of multilateralism, with the consequences of living equally with other race, religion, gender, and other peoples. So they're trying to upset, trying to destroy, trying to roll back, trying to move back in history and find some so-called glory days that they are still in charge, that they're still dominant. But I think that era is in the past, is in history. We will never go back to 19th century. The world is connected now. The world is developing and growing together, and particularly the rise of the global south with more and more people, with more and more civilizations that will share together. So I think the difficulties can be overcome. Only, of course, the precondition is that people will have to unite and stand firm against any of those attacks from those people who do not want us to live in peace and live in an equitable world.
So Happy New Year, happy horse year, and thank you so much, Professor Hai, for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for contacting me, and looking forward to have another conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.